And I collect MEGO action figures. And right here today, I have something here that's never been done before on a live panel.
Sword of Omens, come to my hand. I, Lion-O, command it. Thundercats, ho! And you're watching The Dorkening.
Oh, yeah, man.
All right, so everybody, welcome to our panel on talking about MEGO Toys and toy collecting in general. My name is Matt Herring. I'm a I was a comic book podcaster, but I'm a music podcaster. I'm a writer. Very excited to be here, but I think I'm more excited to be here because of the gentleman sitting to my right, one of my favorites of all time, Art Baltazar. Art.
All time. Thank you. My name's Art Baltazar. I'm a famous cartoonist from south side of Chicago, and you may know my work from Tiny Titans, from DC Comics, and Itty Bitty Hellboy from Dark Horse Comics, and from Oh Yeah Comics, and our stores and our comics. I just make comics all the time. Comics. I say the word comics every day. I don't know how many times a day, but I said it already 6 times here. Comics. So that's what I do. I'm a cartoonist, and I draw comics all day. It's awesome. And I collect MEGO action figures. And right here today, I have something here that's never been done before on a live panel. I'm going to do an unboxing. You guys don't even know what's in here.
Wow.
I'm the only one here who knows what's in here. Shall I unbox gradually or real fast?
I think we should do it. Why don't we wait to the end?
All right, we could.
We could do that.
We could do
Build
that.
up the suspense. So since we're talking about MEGO Toys, and
Yeah.
I'm looking out and I'm making sure that the age is appropriate on my story, can I share the greatest story ever told with everybody? I told Art this one yesterday a little
Yeah.
bit, but I didn't go into full detail. So growing up in the 70s, MEGO Toys were it. This is how I discovered comic books. I knew my dad had comics and I read them, but getting MEGO Toys and seeing them kind of brought everything to life. And then when you were able to get a Captain America and a Batman and make adventures with them because they're the same size, that was magic. That was my childhood. And that's how I really cultivated my love of comic books, of storytelling. Then
Yeah, I knew we should tell them what MEGO Toys are. If you don't know, they're the old vintage toys from the 1970s they were 8-inch scale, and they had cloth clothes and plastic boots that come on and off and capes and stuff. It was really cool.
So they didn't just do superheroes. They did whatever was coming out at the time. They had Star Trek,
Yep.
and they had Planet of the Apes. So I am a second grader, 1978. I am gung-ho and fired up because it's almost Christmas. It's November, and I am at the grocery store with my parents, and I am in love with Planet of the Apes. And I just happened to walk down and saw an aisle with 5 or 6. And you remember when grocery stores used to have like a really vibrant toy aisle? And I saw these 5 or 6 Planet of the Ape dolls, grabbed them, of course, brought them in, threw them in the cart, and my parents are looking at me going, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Well, I want these." And my parents are like, "No, Christmas is like a month away. You're not getting these." And I'm like all sad and upset, and I bring the figures back to the aisle, but this is where the story takes a little bit of a bad turn. I end up taking all of the figures, ripping them out of the packages, and stuffing them down my pants. This was common practice in the 70s, apparently. I don't know. But I started walking around the store a little bit weird because now I have action figures, probably 4 of them, 5 of them, and they're 8-inch, like Art was saying. They're in my pants. They're making me not walk right. I can't walk right. I can't function. And my parents are noticing this. And then my father grabs a hold of me and says, "What do you have in your pants?" And I said, "Somebody gave me Planet of the Ape dolls at school, and I forgot to take them out of my pants because I didn't have a bag." And that did not fly, especially when we got down the aisle where you now see 5 or 6 Planet of the Ape wrappers open, and they're on the floor. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And this is the story that lives on in my family, by the way. Every Christmas this gets brought up. So my father grabs me and says, "The store manager said if you take them out of your pants right now, you're not going to get arrested." So I'm throwing them all out. My sister is laughing hysterically. She thinks this is the greatest thing she ever saw. And my mother takes me out to the car, and I'm in the back seat of the car crying hysterically. I am so upset.
Did you even have Zira in there, stuff in your pants? All of the apes?
I had everybody.
All of them.
I had
General
everyone.
Ursus was in there?
Ursus hurt because that was a
Man.
big helmet.
And even Dr. Zayas was in it? Yeah, he
Yeah.
had a bigger helmet.
So I'm sitting now with my mother in the back seat of the car, or she's in the front, and I'm crying. And my mother goes, "Well, I'm so glad that you feel remorse for what you did." And I said, I just don't hope Santa didn't see it. And my mother turned around and looked at me and said, "There is no such thing as Santa."
Oh.
That is how I found out how horrible and awful, but what a great story that is, but what a horrible memory. So let's kind of move it along a little bit to much better things. But I had to start with that because that is just such a funny story. But for you, Art, what was it about the MEGO figures that really caught your eye?
Yeah, I grew up watching Batman, of course, Batman and Robin with Adam West, and the Spider-Man cartoon. And my first experience with some of these superheroes was Fantastic Four. I was about 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, and I got them for Christmas. And this was before Star Wars, because then Star Wars came out and everything became Luke Skywalker. But before then, I got the Fantastic Four for Christmas. And my dad told me the thing's name was Rockman, and he told me the Human Torch's name was Bernard. So I called them Rockman and Bernard were a team. And so that's the first time I ever saw those two characters, and first time I ever saw the Falcon and Green Arrow. And when I played as a kid, Green Arrow and Falcon were partners. They were buddies. And I didn't know one was DC, one was Marvel. I didn't know these things. I only knew the Batman show. Of course, I had Batman and Robin. And then we throw them in a swimming pool. They break, or the mask. I had the removable mask Batman, removable mask Robin when I was a little kid. I was little. Like, I can't remember, but I remember them because we got them for Christmas. All my cousins got them for Christmas. We all got the same thing. And we would bring our toys to my grandma's house. And we were all playing with our toys. And one of my cousins had Robin in his mouth the whole time, just holding him. We're talking about he's hanging out of his mouth. And then we're playing with our toys, and I'm looking to make sure, I hope that's not my Robin. Like, why is he? And then when he removed the Robin from his mouth, he had no paint on his head. And I'm like, oh, we just got those today, like for Christmas. And then I looked at my brother was playing with our Robin. I'm like, whew, that wasn't mine. So I don't know. He like removed all the paint. But I remember that. And of course, whenever they broke or the arms would break, the elastic would break. And then we would get a new Batman who had the molded head.
Yep.
And then I was disappointed he couldn't take his mask off now, and Robin's mask was painted on. But I probably went through about 4 versions of Batman. I went through like 6 Spider-Mans. And man, I just play with these guys all the time. And these were our action figures. And I remember leaving my Incredible Hulk by my grandma's house and coming home, and where's the Hulk? And I missed him. Then when I went back to grandma's house, she had him up on her dresser. And she goes, here's your Hulk. And I looked, and he had all bites from her puppy. He was all mangled. But she knew like what they meant. That was like Lou Ferrigno. Hulk was on TV at the time. So, man, it was just, those are my early memories of them. And we were just talking about, I was talking about someone else today. If we were good or Easter or we had no cavities or something, Mom and Dad would take us to Toys R Us. And you'd see this whole aisle of MEGO toys at Toys R Us. And they would say, okay, pick one. You were good, pick one. I'm like, oh, look at all these guys. And the one I wanted was Batgirl, because Batgirl looked so cool. She had the most accessories. She had the gloves. The helmet would come off. But I was always afraid to bring the Batgirl toy over, leave the house. Like, hey, we're going to play toys outside. And I'm like, sorry, Batgirl. I'm embarrassed. Like being a boy growing up, you never wanted the girl toys. But I wanted all the girl toys. I wanted Wonder Woman. I wanted Catwoman. But they were always real nice and clean. I never threw them in the backyard or in the swimming pool. But Batgirl, I now have like 4 of them. Like when you get older and you become an adult with a job and extra money, I start buying them all. So I missed a lot of the toys growing up, but I was able to pick them up. Oh, another thing, like remember the Spider-Man cartoon had the Green Goblin was on there, and he had purple boots. He had a pinker suit, but his boots were always darker purple. And on an episode of Spider-Man, he had the magic wand he found the magician's wand and hat. So I thought that was his powers. And when I started reading comic books, it was Spider-Man was fighting the Jackal and the Tarantula with Naked Gwen Stacy clone. It was those books I was reading. I broke into comics reading those when I was a 7 years old kid. So I'm watching Naked Gwen Stacy run around. But the Jackal was also green with pointy ears. And he looked just like the Green Goblin, but without the purple. And I'm thinking, why does he look different in the comics than in the cartoon? Like, I first saw him in a cartoon, like, where is he in the comic books? And he said, no, maybe they got the names mixed up. So I thought there was Green Goblin. They called him Jackal for the cartoon. So I learned later it's 2 different guys. But that was my first experience. And then the MEGO toy of the Green Goblin had scales on his arms and legs. And I didn't know why that, because the lizard's tail had scales. And I was wondering, like, maybe they're related. I don't know. It's like when you're a little kid, because the Green Goblin on a cartoon was smooth. He had smooth, green, silky skin. But on the toy, he had scales. So it's kind of, that's where I was. That was my...
They were so much fun, and especially to play with. And I think when you were mentioning going into the toy store, and there were just rows, it would be like an entire section of just Megos. And like you said, it would be like, hey, you got a good report card, get one. And I'm like, what, one?
One.
I mean, that's probably why I stole all the Planet of the Apes dolls, or tried to. But even characters, I was never a big Spider-Man fan, and we have Spider-Man right here, so I apologize for this. My favorite MEGO figure was Spider-Man, but my least favorite comic book was Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
And I used to play with Spider-Man all the time. I loved the cartoon. And then when I picked up my first Spider-Man comic, it was a Marvel Tales one that was telling the Gwen Stacy story.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. I was too young to understand. So I'm getting a phone call, and I don't know why. First person to call me all day.
It's a MEGO collector.
Spider-Man calling. But the whole thing with the Megos, they made bad characters cool.
Yeah, they
like
did.
Aquaman. I think Aquaman is a horrible character, at least back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And here we were with this crazy Mego that looked
They
great.
made him because he was on a Super Friends. That's why they made Aquaman, or vice versa. But they didn't get the Flash or Green Lantern. That always
And Flash was my favorite superhero, and they never had him. And that was I used to. And do you remember when they made a Teen Titans set?
Yeah.
I was a little too old to be playing with action figures at this time. This was like 78, 79.
Yeah.
And they had a Teen Titans series, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not that old. And I went to Caldor's, and I remember my mother and a friend went to the restaurant next door, and they gave me she gave me $20 to go be busy for a while. And this is back in the day when you would send your kid into a store without supervision. And I think I bought that, and I bought a couple Micronaut Time Traveler figures because they were cheap.
MEGO made Micronauts too. Yeah.
But the thing for me was Kid Flash became Flash.
Yeah,
so
he
when
was.
I played with him,
filled
it's
that
like
spot.
he would come in and be like, "Hey, what's the different costume?" Oh, I tried to change things up a little bit.
And then you could put take Captain America and put Shazam's outfit on him. He could be the Flash. And if you were bold, you would paint the head. That was my first Flash. And I had an extra Shazam, and I painted him all white. I painted his head white, and he became Iceman because he was Iceman. I was starting to build the X-Men. I was reading into John Byrne X-Men at the time. But they wouldn't make MEGO. They didn't make MEGO figures of those guys. So I had to make a Wolverine mask and just started customizing. And then now it leads to I got about 400 customized MEGOs right now. I got them on, I don't know where they are. Oh, they're on my website. I have a whole page of them. But I discovered the MEGO Museum, maybe 2004, 2006 or something like that. I discovered a MEGO Museum page, and it has all these characters listed, and I've discovered so much about that. And I found out guys who make heads, guys who make suits, guys who make bodies, and I just started, I joined it, man. I became a customizer, and I went nuts. I made my Green Lantern, I made my Flash, but then I made Thundercats, I made Pulp Fiction guys, I made all the Breaking Bad guys, I made, everybody. I made my X-Men, I made Hellboy, I made a whole bunch of guys, and it just became a huge hobby. It became it picked off where I left off. And then too, you grow up, you put your toys away, you pack them in mom's attic, wherever you put them. So in I think it was 90s, late 90s, remember they released, I think it was Hasbro or one of these Toy Biz maybe, they released the super famous cover figures that looked like MEGOs, but they were taller. They were like an inch taller. And I've heard from knowing people that they told China, who was making them, to make 8-inch figures, and they say make 8-inch bodies, which meant the body. So China made the body 8 inches, and with the head on her, they became 9 inches. So they were an inch taller than regular MEGOs. But at the time when I saw these figures, I didn't know they were taller than MEGOs. I saw them at Toys R Us again. I'm like, wow. They finally made X-Men. They got X-Men, the Avengers. I got Vision. I got Hawkeye. And then I was out of the house at that time, 8 years, whatever. You move out and you come back. And then when I returned to mom's house to get all my MEGOs out of her attic or whatever, I opened up and then I got married. This is what happened. It took all these years. It took 30, 40 years for me to realize. And so when I moved in, married, kids, house, I unpack all my stuff, and I'm like, I can't wait to put my famous covers with my Megos, and I put them together, and famous covers were too big. I'm like,
tall.
oh. So what I did was I broke all the heads off and put them on Mego bodies and started, that was part of my big, so now I have a Hawkeye and a Vision and Nightcrawler and all these guys who match Megos. It's just been nuts, man. I walk around at the show here still looking for 8-inch scale heads that I could break off other action figures and put them on Mego bodies. It's nuts.
It must be weird going in going, you got any heads? I need some arms.
It's like, and my friends come over and I got interviewed a few times on the, I was on the news, local news, and I opened a, they said, what's in that drawer? I saw my drawer of heads. And I go, I got a drawer of legs too, and a drawer of feet, and a drawer I got all these things. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And think about back then too, when they started branching out, I had Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
I had Chips.
Yeah.
And I had SWAT.
Yeah, SWAT was LGN.
Yeah.
LGN, I think, yeah.
And the thing with, I remember taking my Paunch from Chips and making him Hawkman.
Oh, did you?
I did. That was like the first
cool.
and only time I ever customized. And by customize, I mean it looked terrible.
Yeah, you
but
were a
it
kid.
served the purpose of having Hawkman in the Justice League.
Yeah.
Until I couldn't put him in the Justice League because I had the Hall of Justice.
Yeah.
And there was like an elevator, a spinner in the back where you could put him in and then they go outside.
Yeah, it was the same thing that the Star Trek
Yeah,
had.
it was basically the Enterprise but painted different. And
Yeah, they made it into Hall of Justice.
Yeah, Hawkman got broken in there because I didn't take into account that the space was this big and
Yeah.
his wingspan was now this big.
Because
And
we
got
had like
stuck and broke.
Yeah, when we played, you got all your superheroes. You got a lot of the Justice League. You got the Avengers, but then we needed bad guys. So we made the Hall of Justice. But Neptunian from Star Trek, few Star Trek aliens, Urkel from Planet of the Apes. That was like General Zod, and this guy just pretend he's Neptunian will fight Aquaman. So you have all these weird. You got Joker, Penguin, Riddler, and all these weird guys. But they would attack the superheroes when we play. Yeah, I feel like I'm 6 years old right now. It's awesome.
And another thing too, like I can't believe I forgot to bring this. You brought what you're going to share.
Yeah, I got
So
stuff.
yesterday, some friends of mine and I, my friends who I'm working with, my cover artist and my editor, we went to Walmart, and Walmart has been doing a really good job with like getting a lot of these MEGO figures in the old card box, the old box. It was the window box.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about being somebody acting like a 5-year-old. I went over to the shelf where the section where they were,
Yeah.
and I got a reverse flash.
Really?
And you could see
Oh,
him
I
there,
didn't
and I'm
see
like,
him yet.
oh my god, and I'm hyperventilating, and it's. I wasn't this
Yeah.
excited having. Well, I don't want to say it, but I was very excited having children.
You didn't put them
However-
in your pants, did you?
Oh no, I paid
No,
for them.
okay,
I
good.
purchased them.
All
But
right.
it's there's something about that same magic feeling.
Yeah.
Seeing the box and having it all come back, and they had a Joker one there.
Yeah, and
which I
they
might
made
go
the
back and
Flash.
get.
They made Flash and Green Lantern this time.
Yeah, the Green Lantern was there.
Oh, did
so
you
they
get him?
had Green Lantern. I didn't
Oh,
get
cool.
Green Lantern.
Yeah,
So if you need one, let me go because I think I'm going
yeah.
back. To
I was
get a
able to.
Joker.
I'm going to show you what I got. Here, we're going to do it right now. This has never before been done on a live panel. There's never been a toy unboxing. And I had these for a little while, but I never opened them, so I wanted to bring them. But this is what he's talking about. I found these at Walmart. Batman and Superman. Yeah, they're cool. And then here's what I'm talking about unboxing. I'm going all the way. I'm going all the way in. It's like, don't destroy the package, Baltazar.
And when we were kids, we would rip that thing. You wouldn't
Yeah.
even survive. It would barely even make it out of the
Yeah.
store.
I never opened these guys yet either. But these guys are the new guys, but they're kind of making them into
Super good.
yeah, like, oh yeah, look at he's in there. But look at what I got. I got my handy dandy notebook, right? No, my handy dandy Chicago style switchblade.
See, so between the switchblade and a drawer of heads, I'm starting to put things together that's kind
Yeah.
of scared me a little
I
bit.
have weapons in my house, yeah, and body parts. So I don't know what's happening. We'll edit that out. Nobody's even laughing anyway.
And you know, the
Jokes
interest,
suck, Baltazar.
as you're opening that, the
Yeah, let's see.
noise on my phone that was going off was the
Yeah.
alarm for 6:20 a.m. that should have gone off today, which didn't.
Really?
It just went off because it was p.m.
It's PM.
It's p.m. now.
I don't know what I'm doing here. Look at this knife is trusty. This one, I don't know. This is great audio right now. Maybe I'll save this for later. This might take a little while. He's got a lot of straps. Let me see what this guy has.
So as a safety manager,
Okay.
you always need to make sure that you cut away
Yeah.
from yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this guy, look at, they're cool. I should just rip him out of this thing. But he's got the I know they got these new bodies with no bands in them now. Man, I'm digging these. Look, I'm excited. No, I didn't cut myself. I do that to my mom all the time. Sure.
At least we have the scouts here. Do you have tourniquet band badges and all that? Good.
I'm gonna just do Superman because he seems to be easier. Batman's got, I don't know, he's all right. I'm gonna do it. Look at it. Look at me go. Look at me living dangerous.
And all the rough play that we used to have, it was amazing how sometimes like because the emblems
yeah,
on
look at
the uniforms were just stickers.
Oh yeah,
Yet
look
we
at
didn't
him.
lose them.
I play Barbies with my daughter, and every time we're playing Barbies, and I'll just start raising Barbie's arm. I'll go bump it up, and she'll say, "No, Dad." I'm like bump it up. And she goes, "Dad, no," and I go bump it. She'll grab my arm. Barbie doesn't fly. Like, oh come on, put a cape on her. No, but he's cool, man. These are these new bodies they're talking about. Hope he doesn't break. Oh, he's cool.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I know from the guys that they used the original heads. They sent the original heads to the manufacturer in China to replicate them perfect. And I'm friends with all the MEGO guys. And like the guys who run the company, I know them now, which is really strange. Like I know a lot of people just working in comics and just collecting toys and talking to people. And it's really strange. Oh, there he is. Batman's gonna be free. And this is the removable. This is the removable mask Batman.
The only difference I can see right now is the back, because
Yeah, they got
used to have this little. It was like a little clip in the back. It was a button. You snapped
Yeah.
it in. It was a snap, and there was only one on the top. So your heroes would be running around with their backs fully exposed
look at him.
to the badness.
Like he's gonna run. Look at him.
Look at that.
Do you bleed? That's what he wants to say. Oh, look at the helmet. Oh, nice and tight. There he is. I know who he is. It's Bruce Wayne. People are like, this panel sucks. It's like,
There's no Santa,
where's the music?
and Batman is Bruce Wayne. This is a bit terrible.
Oh, he's cool looking, man. Here, you want that?
Wow.
Yeah, let's trade.
See, this is so I don't have to take mine out of the box.
Yeah, and he's never been in anybody's pants, so he's good. But he's cool, man. Wow, now I want the rest. I haven't seen him in Chicago. Well, I don't go out a lot. I go to Target all the time. They don't have these at Target, but I haven't been. But he's cool, man. Look at this. Aren't they cool? They don't have the sticker on them. The original Type 1, I'm getting all geek. The original Type 1 Superman, he had the sticker on his back, on the cape. But I guess they eliminated that. But it's cool. And sometimes in the early MEGOs will come with an extra sticker in the package. So in case your sticker fall off, they tell you it's going to fall off here.
I never had that.
Yeah,
I
the
never
origi-
knew that.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, originally. He's cool, man. I like pink very much, Lois. That's what he's thinking right now. It's funny because on my birthday, I'm segueing. On my birthday, my birthday's Christmas Eve. So for the last, since my kids were aware, my daughter's 17, son's 19. So when my daughter was about 10, she asked me, "So Dad, do you have a birthday party?" I was like, "Never had a birthday party." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because the next day's Christmas, too close to Christmas." So she said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I usually get a Christmas present and handshake. Happy birthday, champ." Like that's usually what happens. So ever since then, she's been, every Christmas Eve, I wake up in the morning and I come down my bedroom stairs and the house is decorated like birthday party, but they put streamers and balloons. But the last few years, she's been doing a theme. So she interviews me weeks before my birthday. And she goes, "What do you like?" And I'll tell her, "Oh, I like Star Wars, superheroes, Breaking Bad, and all this stuff, baseball." So one year she decorated the tablecloth all green, and she put I was sitting at home plate, and she put bases. And then on a big TV, they put the crowd, like if I was watching the game. But this last time, she said, I woke up, she heard me, and she ran upstairs and said, "Dad, don't come down yet. We're not ready." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Okay." And then she came back in the room. She goes, "Okay, Dad, do you have a shirt that buttons up?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Okay." Then she came back, "Dad, put your Superman t-shirt on underneath." I'm like, "Okay." And so I wore a Superman shirt. I got my shirt. And then she said, "You could come down." I opened the bedroom door, and she's standing there with her little iPhone with the Superman music. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm walking down the stairs. And when I get to the bottom of the stairs, my wife is in a chair tied up. She got her suit on. And she's going, "Superman, help me." And then my two boys are there with toy guns and masks, and they got the guns looking like this, pointing at her. And she goes, Superman, help me. And my daughter's filming it. So I ripped open her shirt, and it turned into Superman. I put my cape on and ran over there and punched the boys, and they got away. And then I go to untie my wife, and I broke the ropes, and she says, I have pink underwear on, Superman.
Oh,
I said,
geez.
that's not the way it goes, Lois. You're supposed to ask me first. And then my daughter has it on video. It's like 15 seconds. It's really cool. And it was real fun. So that's what happened last Christmas Eve. Yeah. So,
Do you smoke, Lois?
no.
You should quit.
So,
One of the greatest movies of all time. And that was, I don't know about you, for me growing up, Superman was like the lame superhero. That I'd never read Superman. I didn't like Superman. But when the Superman movie came out in 1978, I believe
78.
it was, I became such a Superman fan. And back in those days, they made the movie to sell the comic books.
yeah.
And I remember going right out, I was like, oh, I'm going to start reading Superman. And then I read the comics. I'm like, this is terrible. I don't like it. But I used to love DC Comics Presents because you'd get all the other heroes.
Yeah, it's a team up. Superman teams up.
And then I discovered when John Byrne took over Superman. So
Yeah.
there was like this whole thing where Crisis happened and they reimagined the entire DC universe. And they gave Superman a #1, so I'm like, all right, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And it was John Byrne who did it. And if you've never read Superman or are interested at all a little bit in maybe discovering something, the John Byrne run, which was I think 13 issues and an annual, are probably 13 and an annual of the greatest comics you'll ever read.
And it's his origin. It's really good.
And you're getting, like, you would think how lame is it that you're going to be, Laurie Lamaris, the reintroduction, a story that made me cry when I read it.
Yeah,
that
it was good,
story
man.
made me cry.
So good.
The annual that had Bippo. Where,
Up a super monkey.
yeah, where they had Bippo, and then that ended in a tearjerker. But there was some amazing stuff. What were some of the heroes that you maybe gravitated to with the Migos that might not have been the cool ones?
I always liked Falcon and Spider-Man team up, and the Green Arrow was they were buddies. But when I remember seeing I never played with Superman, and Batman became lame after a while too. It just got goofy the older I got. But then of course Michael Keaton Batman came out and he was cool again. But during before the Superman movie, I was playing a lot of Green Arrow and Falcon and Spider-Man were my favorites. But then when the movie came out, I had a Superman, but he was all broken. So I put a red cape like cloth on Starsky. And
they had Starsky and Hutch. I
yeah,
forgot
and
about
my
that.
Hutch was Lex Luthor. And so, because I had a longer cape, because when you fly this cape, it doesn't move. See, it just does that. But when I put like a longer towel on him, and so when he flew, and the cape would wave, like turn, and it was longer, and it was cooler. And then my dad would ask me, why am I using Starsky and Hutch? But Lex Luthor was Hutch. It was cool. I got a suit put on him. But I remember getting, shortly after the Superman movie, they were still making Migos, and I was able to get Superman. But then it was all about Superman saving Spider-Man and Superman saving the Falcon. They just added them to the mix. And then I'd always make them fight the Hulk and Thing. It was cool. But the movie turned every way. It switched direction. And then, of course, it had Super Friends all the way to 1977, and Star Wars hit. Then everything was Star Wars, put away my Migos. And then Superman movie came out, brought back my Migos back out. And then Star Wars again the next year. And so Migos had to return a few times. And then when Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends came out, that cartoon, they brought my Migos back out. And then, of course, Superpowers and Secret Warriors showed up. Yeah. And then now you're playing with your little guys instead. Yeah, that was the life of a toy guy.
And it's funny because obviously we don't get older, because there's been times where I've been trying to stop collecting toys. I mean, I went for a while without doing it simply because we moved and I just didn't have that room. I didn't have that whole wall like I did in our old basement.
Yeah.
So I'm looking going, you know what, if I can't display the toys, I'm just not going to collect them. And then recently, all of a sudden they did the Star Wars vintage line that are on the card, and they look exactly like the old ones. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to get Luke Skywalker and a Stormtrooper, because those are my first two.
Then I'll stop.
I have my entire wall of my studio is all full of those figures. I probably have 80 of them. And every time I buy one, I have to shift them around because I have to have them in order
Yeah.
Like all the Star Wars. So if they do a Star Wars one, I have to shift everybody. But the one that I've been really excited about the most, because it goes back to the superheroes, are the
Yeah.
Walmart superpowers.
Oh yeah, I just bought some. I got Batman and Robin and Aquaman, Darkseid. I just got them today. I should have brought them.
And
yeah.
the thing with those is it's a 8-inch figure. It's 8 inch or it's like 7 inch.
They're 5-inch, I think. They're
And
little 4 or 5.
they're beefy.
Yeah.
The packaging is great, and
Yeah.
I think they're exclusive to Walmart.
Yeah.
But you go to the store and they're $9.
Yeah.
You're not breaking the bank, and that to me is like those vintage Star Wars figures.
Yeah.
The card is this big, the figure is this big.
Yeah.
And it's $17.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did you see the Wonder Woman's invisible jet figure?
I did.
The toy.
I was surprised I was able to see it. It said as it was invisible, but I knew where it was. Like, how does that? It's kind of like, yeah, it's like, kind of like, what's in there? You sure it's in the package? And the guy's like, get away. I heard that before. But yeah, but you know what? Like, being adult collecting forever. Now, when you get a whole run, like say you have all your Megos. I got all the Megos. I got all the Star Wars. But once you collect them all, do you still look at them when you go walk the floor? Yeah, me too.
Yep.
I always look at Yak Face from Star Wars.
Yes.
And he's like $500 now. I said, I bought him 3 years ago for $300, sucker. You know, but, oh, wait. No, wait. But I still look at the Megos all the time. I'm like, oh, good. He's only $60. I got him already. I got the one. I got him in 1972. Still got him. Or whatever, 75. I don't know.
Now, do we have any Star Wars figure fans here, or anybody that knows like sort of the history?
yeah.
Okay. So 1979, because 77 didn't have the figures. 78 had
Yeah.
like 12 figures and the 3 vehicles. So 79 was when they started to expand. And I remember telling my parents for Christmas I wanted the Star Wars Cantina because you started getting Cantina figures. And I only had Greedo at the time. It was the Luke Skywalker X-Wing fighter pilot and Greedo were the only 2 I had of the new series. So I just simply wanted the Cantina because you had the lever that you could pop and Greedo would go flying.
Yeah.
So I told my parents I wanted this. They bought it at JCPenney through the catalog. And I remember opening it up and they're like, well, you know, you got a figure in here. And it was the Snaggletooth figure that the Snaggletooth that you bought was like 2 inches tall. He was tiny. In the Cantina, he was this big. He was huge. He was taller. He was blue. And I remember being so upset because now I'm like, well, great. Now they're not going to buy me the Snaggletooth I really want. So I gave it to a kid.
Oh, the blue one?
Yeah. How much is that thing worth now?
$800? I don't know. So I saw him. A guy had him on the floor. I saw it today. But I had mine since I'm a kid. Yeah.
And it's one of the more collectible, more expensive Star Wars figures because it was so exclusive. And my parents got it, and I was like, "You kidding me?"
You know what the coolest thing about the Star Wars Cantina figures is? I didn't know it was Cantina till later. I used to call it the bar, Star Wars bar. So we would call it the guys from the bar. But now when you think about it, it was so cool that I wanted to play with the drunk aliens from the bar. Like, because they would just get around and get shot. Greedo would always get shot every time he played. Han Solo would shoot him. I'm Walrus Man, lose his arm. So they were trying to pick fights, but they were drunk. But I liked all that. I have a shirt that has all of them on there, and even my brother said, "Oh, the drunk guys from Star Wars."
I mean, you think about that part of it. That was, you know, the reason and I know we're kind of diverting a little bit, but the reason Star Wars it was going in with a G rating.
Yeah.
But when they chopped off the arm, that was Snaggletooth.
Yeah, they had blood.
They
on
added
it.
blood to it because they needed the PG rating. But, you know, like years go on before you're watching it on VHS for the first time when it comes out, the first time seeing it as an adult, and you're like, there'd be no blood. The wound would be cauterized. It was a lightsaber.
It's true. Yeah.
Well, you know what? They needed a PG rating.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the figures that you buy now? Like, other than the Megos, like
I buy these, but I'm real. Like, I used to buy anything that came out. But now when there's repeat characters, I don't buy them as much. But I still look for Megos, of course. I still buy 3 3/4 inch Star Wars, and I buy. I like those new Marvel guys that came out, the retro ones. But I didn't get that last batch with Power Man and Spider Woman. But I like those. Those are really cool. And I watch, or I buy. Sometimes I get some DC guys, but not as much because they're the same guys who come out. But I go to the store and look at those McFarlane figures. Man, they're making all kinds of characters. They don't care if it. It's like, oh, no one knows who it is. Let's make it anyway. That's what I like about it. They got some cool obscure characters. And when I go in that toy aisle, I was like, man, they made this guy. Like this guy was like, baby Jesus must have been listening, you know? It's like, please, baby Jesus, make that weird looking Flash with the one eye. I need him, my collection. And then they make them. Yeah, they make them. Yeah, but it's cool. I just buy a lot of stuff, but I love Thundercats a lot. I'm a big Thundercat guy. So I have a whole bunch of Thundercat collections that got started, but they always get canceled. So I have like several Lion-Os and a few Tigers, but they never finish the line. And the current line is like, each figure is $85. I'm like, man, I guess I'm not collecting Thundercats. So I made Megos of them. Yeah. I made Mego Thundercats.
And that's bringing that up too. That was another one where with DC, do you remember when they did the Pocket Heroes?
Yeah.
These
cool.
things were like this big. They didn't look that great, but you were getting characters like they had the Justice Society. So I remember being like, I am all in. So I started buying them all, putting them all, getting them all, and then they stopped the line.
Yeah.
And now you're stuck with a bunch of figures that don't make sense. And it was like instead of like stopping it on 10, it was like 6.
Yeah.
Or it was like 13. It was a really odd number that you couldn't display right. You just brought that up. That's a big part of it. Like you want to be in for the long haul.
You know, remember the Mattel ones from a few years ago? They all had the same bodies, but they went deep. They had everyone from the Dark Side guys, Green Lantern Corps. They made everybody. I got a lot of those. Those were cool. And I was able to get a bunch online real cheap because people like had so many. You buy a loose one for $5. Man, I got a Booster Gold and Beetle and all these guys. Man, I love toys. Like I don't, and I always say I'm gonna stop. And even when I come home from like, there's this Kane County flea market in Chicago. Like it's probably the biggest toy show outdoor. And I go there with my shopping bag, just buy a bunch of stuff, and I'll come home and line up all my figures, and I'll have all these stormtroopers. My wife will say, you have a stormtrooper. I said, no, but look at this one, has a little red dot on his helmet, and he's from that thing. And this guy's like, this is before that, and they're all lined up, and they're each different, but she's like whatever. You know, as long as our bills get paid, kids go to school, you know.
And as long as you can tell yourself you can stop at any time.
Yeah, I could stop. I just bought 4 figures today. Not hope they fit in my luggage. There's a guy out there who has a R2-D2 like this big, and I really want it. And I'm like, man, I got to sell like a whole box of books so that will fit my suitcase. I just bring it on my carry-on. You know, who's that? Oh, don't talk, he's sleeping. You know, maybe that.
And when I was a kid, I don't know if you did this or if anybody else did this, with Star Wars especially, because the Megos for me were always like, you could do one-off adventures because for the most part, a comic book was a one-off adventure. Very rarely did it go into 2 or 3 issues.
Yeah.
But with Star Wars, I remember if I started getting figures in mid-1978, I would start an adventure, and until the last day, 3-4 years later, that I stopped playing with toys, it was one continuous adventure.
It was like a movie.
I kept it. That's what I did. And I would even intersperse like, oh, it's Empire Strikes Back time. Or when I did Return of the Jedi, when I did the Empire Strikes Back, I left out the Bespin scene because Han Solo needed to continue.
Yeah, or when Han Solo are fighting on Hoth and Han Solo has to run in the Falcon. Then he has to change his clothes because they just went to Tatooine, so you got to get a different Han Solo, make him leave the Millennium Falcon. But we would do that too. The front room was like Hoth, the dining room was Tatooine, and the toys all over the house, and Mom would get real mad, and we'd always say, but Mom, we're continuing. Our story's to be continued. Well, get them out of here. And then Dad trips or steps on a Lego, and you're done. And then you got to throw that back in the closet, you know.
Did you ever try to use the, well, I'm learning something. This is educational.
Yeah, I know a lot of things. They didn't they wouldn't do that. Yeah. I remember Atari showed up, and that took over about 6 months. Then we went back to playing superheroes and Star Wars stuff. Yeah.
So does anybody have any questions about toys, about collecting, about art, about anything?
Mego rocks. Mego's the best. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love Ninja Turtles. They were awesome. I read the original book. I was able to buy the comic book at my comic shop. And maybe I was in high school, junior, senior high school. But then when I went to college, the kid next to me in college said, hey man, do you read Ninja Turtles? I'm like, yeah, I love it. He said, they're gonna make a cartoon. I'm like, no way, how are they gonna make a cartoon? That book's so crazy and violent. And then I waited to watch the cartoon, and it wasn't for me. They had eyeballs and they ate pizza. I'm like, it's not them. It's not what what the comic is. So I was like, I knew that was like where I was like, I had my stuff. And so the Ninja Turtle guys, you took over. We passed the baton to you guys, and you watched the Turtles and He-Man. None of this stuff. The only thing that stuck for me in the 80s was Thundercats. I loved it. I recorded it on this new machine we had called a VCR. You know, in my house it was called VCRs, and we had that. And so well, my grandma called it that. But we had a VCRs, and we would record Thundercats. But He-Man or Thundercat or He-Man or Transformers, G.I. Joe or Turtles didn't stick with me. I think I was just like already 18, 19 years old at the time. And but yeah, man, I appreciate Turtles. They created a legacy, especially with their toys. I've seen all the movies, but then when I saw the original movie and I watched it, I'm like, yeah, that's the comic book I read. You know, because the first word he says in that movie was, damn. I'm like, wait, that's. But that's what they were like, but they didn't have they all had different colors. But in the comic, they wore red masks. It was cool.
So before we get to Spider-Man's question, I want to, with the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Western Mass, and the Ninja Turtles were created in Northampton.
Oh,
so
cool.
when the buzz started to happen about it, it happened obviously locally, and I was local. So I remember going to a flea market, and some guy had an oversized comic, and I'm looking at it going, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's this thing called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my entire life. How could anybody? And I'm like, $250. Why would somebody pay $250 for a magazine-sized comic book? Yeah. I must have walked 5 feet before I went back and said, I'll have that issue, please.
Yeah.
And became hooked. And about 3 or 4 years later, I was working at a radio station in Northampton when it just really started to hit. Because it took about 2 or 3 years for the comic before it became anything. I had a glow-in-the-dark Ninja Turtle shirt that I ordered from the back of the comic. I was DJing on the radio, and these guys walked in and just sat down. Didn't think anything of it, and then they came into the studio to do something in the other studio, and the guy came in. He goes, "Are you a Ninja Turtle fan?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I love them." And he's like, "Oh, we created them." I'm like, "Yeah, wow. Great, yeah, it's great." And then I went back to 99.3. Here's Whitesnake, and then I flip on the studio monitor to hear what they're doing in the production studio, and it was Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird talking about creating this comic. And then I'm like, and then they started leaving, and I go, "Hey," I'm sorry, I didn't believe you. And they're like, yeah, well, you're dead to us, or something like that. They walked away, and then they came back, and they had a Fantagraphic collection of the first ones, and they signed it and drew Ninja Turtles in it for me.
Wow.
And I still have that. And I mean, the Ninja Turtles were
that's cool,
amazing. So Spider-Man, you had a question.
Oh yeah, ClassicTVToys.com. Yeah. Yeah, they sell parts. I buy from them like all the time. I send them $300 every time I shop. I got a whole bunch of stuff from them. And I did a house ad for them for a comic book, and they asked me what I want to charge. I said I want $500 worth of bodies. And they gave me. I got a big box. I got a big supply of bodies now. I got parts. I just want stuff from them. Just give me a bunch of your stuff. And they're like, no problem. So yeah, they know me. Well, I guess we're friends. I think we are. It's kind of like when you listen to a TV show or a podcast, you know them. So that's I don't know.
In lieu of payment, please send bodies.
Please send me a bunch of toys. So I buy from them all the time. Yeah, they're great. I love them. You do custom figures? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got to make more, man. I create original guys too and put them up for sale now and then. I created a character called Megor. That is, remember in the 1970, I think it's the 75, they had a MEGO game called the Mangler. And it was a vehicle that you put the guys in or something, but they would knock down cards, but they had all the bad guys on it. They had Joker, Penguin.
Oh, I do remember that.
And then they had Mixaplik, and they had Green Goblin, and they had a weird guy named the Jungle Chief. And nobody knew who the Jungle Chief was supposed to be a bad guy for. He looked like a cheetah. And we're assuming that he was Tarzan's bad guy, because the figures at the time were Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Tarzan were the heroes. So that's the only thing MEGO had was this Jungle Chief character. So I took him and made an action figure of him. And I got enough for 20, but I couldn't finish all 20. I put up 10 of them about 3 months ago. I put them up on eBay for $75 each. They sold out in like 10 minutes. And like, because people, I did a live show painting them. I did all this stuff, really promoted it for like 8 months. And I wanted them to get them done faster, but it took me all that time to get them finished. And man, the MEGO guys went nuts. They bought them. And it's a figure that's always been supposed to be in a collection, but it was that missing hole. It was Tarzan never had a villain. So I'm going to be making more. I might have them done for November because I'm going to my buddy's. But we're doing a crossover store, a store crossover. No one ever did a retail crossover. He has a store in St. Louis. I have one in Chicago. I'm going to visit, and I told him, I'm bringing all my stuff. I'm going to work in your store for 2 days, but we're going to cross-promote merchandise, and he's freaking out. What do you mean?
What store in St. Louis?
It's called Castaway Toys. Castaway Toys. It's near St. Louis, yeah.
Is it in the St. Charles area? Because I might have gone there.
It's near Kansas City.
No, I was on the other side.
Kansas City. He lives between Kansas City and St. Louis somewhere. He's
5 comic book stores
yeah.
in about a 5-mile radius of my hotel when I was in St. Louis.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love all this. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Which MEGO is the most valuable, and what are we looking for now?
Which one of your children is your favorite?
Which one? Like, I don't know, man. I like I've been collecting since around 2004. I just started rebuying a lot of guys. So I have like 3 Green Goblins now. I have all the ones I played with as a kid. They're on a shelf, but I keep buying them. If I see a good price, I just pick them up. And anytime I go to MEGO Meet, there's a MEGO show every year. I always buy a Spider-Man, or I piece them together. So I have a lot of customs that are real cool, but probably my Spider-Man. I have 2 of them. I have one that's all stretched out, and his legs and arms are taped up because he was broken. I bet I like that one the best. That was probably, if he left, it would hurt my heart. I'd want him back. I'd pay $100 to get him back. I want him, but he has dog bites on his head, all kinds of stuff like that. But the guys I'm looking for now are mostly probably new guys, like certain ones. Like when they make new ones, I like them. But I have all the old ones. I like another lizard because my lizard tail's all weird looking. It starts out thick and turns into like a sock at the end. It's weird. But I don't know, man. And I still don't have, I don't have all the original apes. I don't have, I never was a Star Trek fan, but I have the new guys. But I don't know. It's weird. And I know that the company that made the shirts for the Star Trek uniforms is the same company that made my Action Cat plushie for our store. It's the same factory made that, so it's kind of cool. And I'm friends with the guys who make the MEGO, so he hooked me up. So like, wow, that was cool. So I don't know. It's like all interwoven. I can't pick one. Yeah. Yeah, I made lots of figures. Like the best one I ever made, man, I don't know, man. I made a Netflix Daredevil. I made a Venom 2099. I had this Spider-Man 29 bodysuit, and I got the Venom head from the famous covers, and I got these weird dinosaur hands I put on him, and he got webbed feet, and he's pretty cool. And I put the webbing under his arm, so I go pretty nuts. Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty cool, thanks. It's possible. Yeah, email me. Let me know.
Anybody else have any toy questions or anything?
Do you know already what the most expensive, you've already covered this, forgive me, the most expensive MEGO, like the rarest MEGO? Oh, the rarest MEGO, most expensive. It might be, I'm thinking it's probably removable mask, Batman or Robin on the Type 1 body with the elastic bands. That's because those were the first ones. And there's been, I've heard too, I've been to a few MEGO panels with the big guy, Marty Abrams was talking, and he said that their first account was with Montgomery Ward. And he was saying this, I know it's true, it came right from him. And he said that it was his mom and his aunts and his sisters were all sewing the clothes at the kitchen table because they got a purchase order from Montgomery Ward for, I don't know what the amount was, but like 10,000 of these things. And they had to make them. So they would go to the store and buy fabric, and they would cut it out the kitchen table, and everyone was sewing machines and doing all these things with the clothes. So some of the early outfits with Batman has the stirrup straps on the bottom of his feet instead of like these guys have like this whole toe like this, covers his whole foot. Like there's a camera. Like look. But some of them have it's like a pant leg, and they have the stirrup goes around the ankle. And some of the material is not the stretchy kind. Some of it, the fibers are wider because it's meant like for, it's like a sweater almost. So that, I know those variations of Batman are highly sought after. And Marty Abrams said those costumes were made at his kitchen table. So that little bit of info is like people seek out them. So I know those are hard. And same with like, there's a few Star Trek aliens that are hard to find. They go for $400, $600, some of them. The Andorian, I think, is one of them. But maybe that little guy, he was on a different body. I forgot what his name is, though. I don't know their names. He's got a big head, reads minds. They played a lady, a woman actress played on the show. I don't know. Yeah, the Boba Fett, Rocket Fire and Boba Fett. He's most rare. And I heard too, that's like a urban legend story, like how many exist. I heard there's 3. Then I don't know if you see one, if it's real, unless the guy made it. I met the guy who designed the Boba Fett like last year in Cincinnati, and I asked him some things, and he said, yeah, he made the prototype. He made the prototype from a C-3PO body and a Stormtrooper body, and the head was a dowel rod that he cut with like a jigsaw when he molded it. That's that picture you see, that prototype Boba Fett. That head was
wicked smooth.
Yeah, he did it out of wood. It was a wooden head, C-3PO and Stormtrooper body parts, and a cloth cape was from something. It was from Shower Curtain, I think he said.
And the thing with, like, you're just talking about Boba Fett, and those things, as silly as this may sound, and I'm not doing this as a plug for my book, I go through like 3 pages of constantly going to the mailbox waiting for my Boba Fett to show up.
Yeah.
And there's a line in there because it's about me in the world of 1979, and I go to the mailbox and I open it up and there's nothing in there but like my dad's Fur Fish and Game magazine and some other stupid stuff and bills. And I say something like, how long does 6 to 8 weeks actually mean?
Yeah.
Because we waited, and I remember, because there was no media, there was no anything, there was nothing related to toys. I remember finally getting the Boba Fett in a white box, opening it up, and being like, trying to pull the missile up, because I'm like, well, it's supposed to come out. And there's nothing on the back, there was no button. It's like they lied to me. And I remember being upset, thinking somebody was screwing with me.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything. I didn't know any stories. I didn't know about I knew about the Battlestar Galactica toy and the boy dying, and that was kind of why.
Yeah, he ate it or something.
They did that, but it was like, they're doing this to me. I took it personal.
Yeah, and then I always said that whoever they're hiring to write Star Wars movies or TV shows, one of the questions on an application should be, how long did you wait for your Boba Fett toy in the mail? And the proper answer is forever. And if they say, there was a Boba Fett toy? No, don't hire that guy. You got to hire the person who played with the toys, who had Boba Fett, fight Luke Skywalker and fly into the AT-AT, and then you can even add your MEGO pocket superheroes. They could go to Krypton, and you could use that base, the Hoth base for Krypton. I did all that too. Did you do that?
Yeah.
But and then Darth Vader says, "I'm your father." No, you're not. Jor-El's my dad. Yeah, nobody laughed. Bad joke. We'll take that out. Oh, I like them. Yeah, I buy all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I like all of it. I just don't buy a lot. I got a whole bunch. I must have thousands of action figures. It's too much. I have to buy drawers to put these things in. Otherwise, there's nowhere to put them. There's too many. Yeah. Yeah, and he would move. Yeah, I remember that. I sold mine at a yard sale. That's okay. I had 2.
And since I can't show a video camera, can we get a close up of this? I'll show you. There's the smoke. There's the smooth.
Yeah.
That was a smoothie.
That's the actual real. That's the rocket fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's page 18 of the book where I start
nice.
going, how long does 6 to 8 weeks really mean? As I got
Too
my
long.
issue of Grit magazine.
Yeah. My wife asked me that. How long's an hour? We ordered that pizza an hour ago. I says, honey, it's been 12 minutes. You know. Don't they know I'm hungry?
No, I know we've been talking a lot about toys. Everybody knows about Art's comic books, right? And Oh Yeah Comics and Oh Yeah
who is that guy?
Titans and Baby Hellboy.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about anything going on right now. I know that you've been doing some of the
Yeah.
adventure books, or like the.
Yeah, I do,
I call them adventure because I don't know what to really call them.
I did a lot of Super Pet books. I did like 50 Super Pet books. But my new book, it's called Yogs. It's coming out next Wednesday at the comic shop. It's called Yogs. It's an adventure, heroes on adventure, saving their land of Yogs. They're called the Crays. But the cool thing about my book is it was the first book I broke into publishing with in the 90s. 1992, I made this book, and it finally got to the stores in 94. I figured out how to do all that distributing and printing there was no internet, kids, in 1992. And it was really weird. I was on the phone a lot, licking a lot of envelopes. But this book, I have a publisher, Paper Cuts. It's from Mad Cave. And throughout the last few years, 4 or 5 years, they published a book called Gilbert, the Little Merman. And after the 4th book, they said, it's a question you want to know as a creator. You've been waiting for this question is, what else you got? I'm like, oh, cool. And I said, I got this thing from 30 years ago. And I showed it to them. It was my old Cray-Baby Adventures. And they said, we like this. I'm like, really? I said, now I'm going to call it Yogs. And it's funny because they said, why are you changing the name? I said, because when you show people Cray-Baby Adventures, they call it Crazy Babies, or they don't know how to say it. They can't read. And so I called it Yogs because Yogs is Yogs. There's nothing that means anything else. So, and they said, oh, they'll get it. Yogs makes much more sense. But they're fighting on the land of Yogs. And I'm really happy. It's going to be a 3-book trilogy, and it comes out next Wednesday. And we're going to have, if you're in the Chicago area next weekend, we're having a big party at my store in beautiful downtown Skokie called Oh Yeah Comics. Chucky will be there. And then I'm going to have Harold's Chicken. I'm going to have not giveaways. Yeah, maybe giveaway. I don't know. We're going to have a lot of stuff. I bought a lot of merch, stickers, and squishy balls and all kinds of stuff. But it's going to be fun, man. But I've been working on a lot of creator-owned stuff. I'm publishing my own comics. Go to my website, has them. I'm plugging. ElectricMilkComics.com is my publishing. So, man, I'm just doing comics right now. I got a few things coming out from DC Comics next year. Teen Titans Go to the Library. Worked on that book with my good buddy Franco. And I'm working with AEW right now, wrestling. So I'm working on a big AEW book, like a big trade paperback. Hopefully we can sell it at some of their pay-per-view shows and stuff. So, man, I'm all in it. I'm in it to win it, man.
And what booth are you at? Do you know the number?
I'm at N15, N16. You just look for the guy who looks like George Clooney, and you'll find me. Yeah, that would be me. People get confused. When I tell them I'm not him, they don't believe me. I'm not George Clooney. He gets the same thing, man. He said, man, people keep calling me famous cartoonist. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's true. George Clooney, yeah. Yeah, man. So meet us over there. And Matt is in the hallway over there.
Yep, I'm in the hall. I'm at the end. If you see the TARDIS, you went a little too far. I'm right next to the TARDIS. It was great. I wrote a Doctor Who book a bunch of years ago, so being next to that TARDIS was perfect. I didn't have to do anything but just sign books and hand them off. But now I don't have that book anymore because I can't get any more. But come by and hang out, and we'll talk more about toys. And Art, thank you very much.
Yeah, man. You're a good man, sir.
You're the
Thank you,
best.
sir.
You're
sir.
the best.
Yeah. Nobody fell asleep. I'm so happy. Yeah. Is that good?
That's
I
great.
feel like we need some music.
Excelsior!